We help leaders to communicate effectively, and one definition of communication is information that changes behavior. Welcome to this latest series of How to Work with Humans. At Threshold, we train business leaders in the art of getting the best out of human beings. And here we explore the standout topics from our recent sessions and the science behind them. Ultimately, you want people to do something different as a result of what you're saying to them. Stories change behavior. To understand why that is, it helps to look at the neuroscience for a moment. You're probably familiar with some of the better-known parts of the human brain. The limbic system is the most ancient part of the brain, and it processes instinct and emotion. You've probably also heard of the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain we evolved most recently as a species. It's the part of our brain that enables us to navigate the adult landscape. When we make logical, rational decisions based on facts, we largely have the prefrontal cortex to thank. So, it's largely understood that the limbic system tends to process emotion, whereas the prefrontal cortex is busy with rational and logical decision-making and planning. Or at least that's the view of the brain that's been in the popular mainstream for some time. However, we now understand that the situation is not so simple. A lot of emotional processing also takes place in the prefrontal cortex. In fact, the prefrontal cortex consists of two elements which work together in a type of partnership. It's worth noting that the idea that the rational and emotional are in conflict is quite misguided. These two centers of processing have evolved to work together. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex processes facts and data, logic and rational decision-making. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex lets us know how we feel about something. Effectively, this is our emotional temperature check, our gut feeling. So, if, for example, on my way here, I remember that I left the stove on at home, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex will seek to assess the realistic probability of damage being caused, the time and cost of returning home relative to other priorities. However, this guy on my right, my emotional thermometer, will simply say, this doesn't feel right, and I'll take action. What we know is that behavior only really changes when the ventromedial prefrontal cortex is involved. And that's where stories come in. And that's ultimately what changes behavior. Stories stimulate the sensory cortices and the emotional circuits in the brain. The ventromedial cortex senses these changes and lets the dorsolateral cortex know how we feel. And then behavior changes. Stories change behavior. And stories that contain a sensory or emotional component change behavior above all. And in case we were in any doubt about that, consider this. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studied patients with damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain involved in emotional processing. And he found something particularly interesting when he came to agree the next appointment. People who were otherwise perfectly intelligent were quite incapable of making a decision. Now, this suggests that the emotions play a very crucial role in the ability to make decisions. Those of you as old as me might remember Mr. Spock from the original Star Trek series. Spock was half Vulcan and was capable only of logical thought, unencumbered by human emotions. As a result, he was cognitively brilliant and immediately able to assess any situation based on flawless logic. In reality, he would have been next to useless, unable to make a decision and act. We should be very grateful to our very human ventromedial prefrontal cortex. To find out more about Threshold and how we can help leaders in your organization to get the best out of human beings, go to threshold.co.uk. You can watch the rest of our How to Work with Humans series on our channel. Do share and subscribe.